the media and the world seems to have a lot of influence over the young people today. And so I want to talk to the young people, young men and young men specifically, and of course this would apply to women as well. Now, when you look through the media, especially you get into TikTok and get into Twitter and Instagram and all of those different social media platforms, there seems to be this level of influence and competition of who is living a better life, of who is richer, who has the most trendy and most expensive car, and who has the nicest, lives in the nicest house, and who eats in the most expensive restaurant, and who owns the most expensive phone and gadget and things like that, who gets to go to the most expensive vacation. And that seems to be the trend today. You flip through, you turn on from Twitter, you get into TikTok, you find the same, you get into Instagram, you find the same, and you get into different Facebook pages, you find the same. And so now that it's becoming in a way a norm and like an order of the day. And unfortunately, as a result, many of our young people, young men and women, have fallen prey to that. And so many young people are now living a life of pretense, living a life that's a life that's not their own, a life that they don't afford. There's so many times where you find someone will take a picture, for example, and then crop it and then do Photoshop and pick a picture from the internet and show that they're somewhere in Dubai for a holiday and post it because they want to fit in with the group narrative, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to live a good life and a better life. As a matter of fact, we should all strive to have a better life, to live a better version of ourselves today than we were yesterday and the years before. But the reality is we must do that within our means. I've seen young men, for example, get into debt to borrow money so that they can hire one of the most expensive cars they can get so that they can impress a girl to take her on a date, or so that they can go to one of the most fanciest restaurant there is, or so that they could either hire a suit or buy an expensive suit because they want to impress. There are young people, and not even just young people, there are many, even some older, who are living in very expensive houses that they can't afford, and so month in and month out, they're in debt and borrowing money one month after another from different people, and now they, for example, live in hiding because there's so many people who are demanding money from them whom they owe because they've borrowed money from this person and that person and that person and that bank and that institution and that microfinance and then all of this, and now they're not free because they want to be able to rent an apartment, rent a condominium and live in a unit that they cannot afford at the time. They're living a lie. Now, that kind of competition is not good. And so I want to say this to encourage my brothers and encourage the young people. You need to have a plan. Put it down. What do you want to achieve in the next 1 year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to go in your life? Whether you're single, what do you envision for your family? You're married. What does that look like? And if you're already working, you know what you're making. Try and live within your means, right? I don't necessarily need to have designer clothes for me to look nice, smart, and presentable. right? For example, there are suits that you can get very nice fancy suit at 200,000 Ugandan shillings, for example. But then there are, of course, suits that goes all the way up to 2 million, 3 million. At the end, if it's neat and well maintained and all that, you're both nice and presentable, right? And so, for example, why would you want to go and buy a suit of 1 million when you definitely know you cannot afford it? Of course, if you can afford it, if you have all the money, then you can get whatever you need. No problem, you can go and get that. But why do you need to spend 1.5 million to buy one suit when you could get 2 suits, for example, at 500,000 Ugandan shillings? You notice that? So, unfortunately, many who are doing this, it's more for a show. It's, for example, it's with the ladies. You see ladies are in their own trap, in their own competition of who has the most recent trendiest hairstyle and the most expensive hairstyle and the most expensive nail polish and nail extension and the most expensive kind of makeup and layers and the most, the newest trendy design shoes and designer bags and clothes and all of those. Ladies are trapped in their own, right? And people, young people, are so much trapped now into who is owning the most expensive phone, for example, right? And so again, if you can afford the things, no problem. But you'll find someone will toil and struggle and borrow money so they can buy iPhone 14, right? For example, borrow money to buy iPhone 14 because they want to impress their peers. They want to appear as the guy or the lady who has the money, who has the most expensive of all, when he's barely affording rent, he's barely affording food, cannot afford a day-to-day bills. But now he's holding in his hand or in her hand something that's worth thousands of dollars just because they want to impress. And they'll never get to use, for example, iPhone 14 for all of its functionality. Again, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with owning an iPhone 14 if you can afford it. But I'm saying, if you cannot afford it, why do you have to go through the stress of borrowing money, get into that, and ruin friendship and ruin relationships because you're constantly living in hiding from the people from whom you've borrowed just because you wanted to impress your friends, just because you wanted to appear and look cool and hip and sexy and nice? We need to, guys, listen to this. You need to stop the mentality of wanting to impress people. Have a plan. Live within your means. Grow from where you are. You ought to start from somewhere. And grow and develop. Don't live your life competing with people, because one, you don't know who they are. Maybe you know them at face value, but you don't know their source of income. You don't know the work they do. You don't know how much they make on a daily or on a monthly. They probably can afford these things. And so they can afford, that's why they have it. But can you afford it? No. Or maybe they come from a wealthy family that can afford these things for them. And so it is okay. For them, it's no issue at all. But do you come from a wealthy family that can supply you those things? And the answer might be no. So you see that at the end of it all, when you try to live your life in competition with others, when you try to live your life based on what other people are doing, based on what other people think, you put yourself in trouble. You throw away your peace of mind because you're constantly under pressure. You're constantly in distress. Do not do that. All right? So, I don't compete with people. Honestly, I am not in competition with anyone. If you think you see me as a competitor, that is on you. I am not competing with anyone but myself. The only person I'm striving to become better than is, of course, other than striving to be like Christ as believers, the only person that I'm competing with is myself. My hope and my goal is to become better than who I am today, to see a better version of myself, and that months down the road, maybe a year from now, that I am better than who I was today, a year from now, that hopefully will have grown both physically and spiritually and intellectually a year from now than I am today, and that hopefully I've also made some financial progress and physical development a year from now than I am today. That I can do, that I can compete with, that I can strive because I can measure. So I'm not competing with anyone. I'm only striving to be the better version of who I am today. So I do that because I have a family to feed. I don't have a community and a village to impress. And if you could only look at that, you have a future to build, you have a family to feed, you don't have a village to impress. At the end of it all, prioritize that and grow and develop. When you get to a point where you can afford it, no problem, get it. Buy and live that life. Go on a vacation. Buy those nice things. It is good, but only when you can afford it. So, my brothers and my sisters, especially my young brothers and young sisters, plan for your future. Do not allow yourself be trapped in the virtual reality of what the internet has presented and the kind of lies that everyone seems to now live, a pretentious life that they don't have. On the social media, you see this lady. You think she's from the house of a minister. She has all of this nice fancy. She's always in these nice fancy places, but when in reality, she lives in a one room and struggling to pay that rent. You see a guy on social media driving a Benz, driving a BMW, and very fancy on switching cars. Today he's on a BMW, the next is on a Range Rover, and all of these fancy places with all of these expensive things. But when in reality, he does not own anything. Probably sleeps on the floor, and that is his real life. So brothers, instead of spending money for luxurious things like that, spend money in developmental things. Spend money in furnishing your house, in equipping your house. Spend money in buying land. Save, buy land. That is an asset. Equip, furnish your house. Invest in things that matters, things that are developmental, things that you can look back to and see the sacrifice that I made, the loan that I got and now I've just finished paying brought that. Not, well, I got the loan and it was all blown in one day because when we went out for a boat cruise. I want to say this again. You have a future to build. You have a family to feed. And if you're not married yet, you have your parents to take care of as well. And of course, even when you're married, does not excuse you from taking care of your parents, but you get the picture. You don't have a village to impress. And at the end of it all, you cannot impress everyone. Strive to be a better version of who you are. Don't compete with people. If you try to, you will crash. Save yourself the stress that you're allowing yourself get into by listening to what people think you should be, and by trying to compete with them and impress them and prove yourself that you are as rich as they are, or that you are better than they are, when in actual sense you are not. Live within your means, and as God blesses you, as you work, of course. Let me say this again. We need to get rid of, I'm going to say this in another meeting, in another video, and then just extend a period of it. But let me begin from here. We also, in the church, we need to get rid of this false mentality of constantly spending every day 24/7 in the church and just praying and praying and praying and praying and fasting and praying and praying and praying and praying, because money does not fall from heaven. God promises to bless the work of our hands. Go and work. Plan, develop. And God will bless that for His glory and for your good. All right? Live within your means. We'll see you again.